Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're diving into something really ambitious. We are tackling one of the most pressing challenges of our time, right? The global decline in literacy and our rapidly shrinking attention spans. We're going to break down the blueprint of the Sensible Education Network, or SEN. They're an organization with a pretty fascinating strategy to preserve human intellect in our digital age.
Let me ask you a question. Have we lost the ability to think for ourselves in the age of scrolling? Seriously, we live in an era where quick answers and endless feeds are literally right at our fingertips. But all this passive digital consumption, it's fundamentally changing how Generation Alpha and Gen Z actually process information. We're looking at a generation that risks losing its capacity for independent thought and deep focus altogether. And well, that is exactly the problem today's subject is trying to solve. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the who, what, where, why, and how of SEN. Then we'll look at the core literacy crisis itself, followed by deep dives into their parental strategy, their learning method, and finally, how they stack up in the market.
All right, let's jump right into the 5 W's of SEN.
Let's establish a solid baseline here. The Sensible Education Network was founded by Abu Daniel Ziley, who's affectionately known as Dan Sensei. He's a former English teacher and a massive reader. Now, they're headquartered in Brunei, but they've got strategic expansions planned for Japan and the US. Their main goal? Combating those passive digital habits and really restoring deep reading. And how do they do it? Well, they mix small group, forum-style online seminars with physical community anchors like local book swaps. Okay, so let's look at the data driving this. The core literacy crisis.
19.95%. I mean, that is a staggeringly low number. In Brunei's late 2025 examinations, fewer than 20% of national candidates achieved 8 or more O-level and IGCSE distinctions. The founders of SEN looked at this and realized traditional tuition, the kind that relies heavily on rote memorization, it just wasn't fixing the issue. Students were skimming instead of actually comprehending, which creates a massive gap in their ability to draw any deep meaning from a text. And guys, this isn't just an isolated thing. It's a global crisis, totally fueled by high dopamine digital consumption. In the US, roughly 40% of students lack basic reading skills. Over in the UK, just under 33% of youth aged 8 to 18 actually enjoyed reading in their free time back in 2025. This overconsumption of media is quite literally leading to functional illiteracy on a massive scale.
So let's shift gears to our first deep dive. How does SEN approach the parents in all of this?
Well, take Kamalia Osman, for example. She's a parent who is talking about her 6-year-old son's very first online class of any sort. She noted that he truly enjoyed it and, even better, he immediately retained new vocabulary. That right there is the absolute core of SEN's parental strategy. They want to create an environment where reading isn't some forced chore. It's an engaging mission, one that yields immediate, observable benefits that parents can actually see.
So how does it work? Parents integrate into the SEN ecosystem through 3 pretty smart community-driven steps. It starts with a super accessible entry point, just a $10 annual membership fee. Step 2 is where parents get to offload the heavy burden of after-school education to expert tutors. We're talking small online group seminars capped at 8 students for about $60 a month. And step 3? That's where the community really shines. Parents participate in a circular economy. They get access to discounted school supplies and a used book marketplace through those local book swaps we mentioned earlier. The whole shebang is designed to be safe, affordable, and incredibly supportive. All right, let's move on to our next deep dive, SEN's unique learning method. At the heart of SEN's philosophy is this concept called cognitive defense. Now, what does that mean? It's an educator-led approach that deliberately builds active learning, critical thinking, and logic. The goal is to literally defend and protect young minds from passive media consumption. Because think about it, in an increasingly AI-dependent world, the ability to actually concentrate and engage in deep work, that's becoming a rare and highly prized skill. They pull this off using a really unique human-in-the-loop workflow. First, the student takes ownership by choosing from curated content that actually respects their personal interests. Second, they do use AI, but strictly to scale personalized administrative tasks. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, the human brain always remains the final auditor of logic and meaning. The technology is there to empower the educator and the student, but it never, ever replaces them. The ultimate outcome here is what they call university-ready learning. They use a method called TBLTCLIL. I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but in practice, it just means they are immersing primary and secondary students in a real university-style intellectual culture. You won't find any PowerPoint-heavy lectures or passive memorization tasks here. Instead, these kids are required to analyze arguments, synthesize ideas, and actively defend their positions in discussion-based forums. For our final deep dive, let's look at exactly where SEN positions itself in the broader market. When you start comparing SEN to the established giants in edtech, the differences are pretty stark. Take Khan Academy. Amazing for self-directed resources, right? But it often lacks that crucial community accountability. Then you've got OutSchool. They provide live groups, but the teaching standards can really vary depending on the independent contractor. And Tutor.com. Great for on-demand help, but it's highly transactional. SEN, on the other hand, is laser-focused on task-based learning with that human-in-the-loop workflow. The only drawback, and honestly I'm not sure you can even call it that, is that it absolutely requires active student ownership. They are not just handing you the answers to your homework, they are demanding that you actually learn how to think.
You see, while traditional ed tech often just mirrors the passive content consumption of the internet, focusing heavily on passing standardized tests, SEN is doing something radically different. They are effectively decoupling high-status pedagogy from traditional brick-and-mortar institutions. They're bringing it online to transform passive digital consumers into true independent thinkers, equipped with actual cognitive resilience. It's a real game changer.
So what does this all mean for us? It leaves us with a pretty massive question. How will you preserve cognitive resilience for the next generation in the age of AI? The Sensible Education Network has laid out a fascinating, community-driven blueprint to answer exactly that. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Keep reading, and above all, keep thinking.